This is Talk is Sheep, a podcast by the Wild Sheep Society of British Columbia. Come along as we take conversations that matter to you into the high alpine.
Mr. Hamilton?
I resemble that remark. How you doing, buddy? I like your scarf.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's...
Aren't you outside, though?
Oh, yeah, it's Christmas, right? It's I know this is dropping after, but we were recording a couple days before Christmas. I got to get in the spirit, so yeah, got to do my part. You're not wearing any red. You're like dressed in ninja gear. So.
Well, do I need to stand up?
No, that's that you don't. I'm always fearful with this new Zoom thing, right? It's like COVID. Okay. People are in their pajamas or whatever. Who knows what they're wearing down there? I don't want to see it.
Yeah, you see some of these guys, like some politicians, are getting nailed for being completely naked on their Zoom. Like,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, at least put on a shirt. Come on, get some class.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so this is a cool episode. So we just sat down with Sue Tidwell, episode 56, Cries of the Savanna. And I like how she titled it. What did she call it?
An adventure, an awakening, a journey to understanding African wildlife conservation.
Yeah, saving Africa's wildlife, whatever it takes, a non-hunter's awakening. Very cool.
Such a neat lady. Like we get into a little bit in the podcast. She commented on a post of something related to Jim Shockey, and said she wasn't a hunter and she used to be against African hunting, and now she went there and it opened her eyes. And I'm like, whoa, big opportunity here to hear a pretty cool story. We've chatted for a month or so, 2 months, whatever it's been, and invited her on the podcast. And I'm super excited to have her accept. And what an incredible episode. This one's going to really, really grab you.
Yeah, lots of emotion. You can just hear it in her voice. And Africa changed her life, obviously. And it's crazy. Very cool chat with her. So, you know, we hear this all the time, like, people that are against hunting in Africa. So, you know, before we started recording here, we're talking about the southern white rhino. It was nearly extinct in Africa in the 60s. Populations were, the low was 840. And a lot of that was due to illegal hunting. People were poaching them, right? And then it slowly started to tick back up. They were protecting them. And in 68, they had 1,000 animals on the landscape, and they opened it up to regulated or controlled hunting, basically guided hunts. And today, through that model in South Africa, landowners are breeding them, they're populating them, they're protecting them, and there's 18,000 white rhinos in South Africa. 93% of the world's population exists there, and it's because of properly managed hunting and advocating for those animals.
That's incredible. And like I was mentioning before, I believe it's South America. You can't hunt leopards, I think it is. And hunters are going there and they're spending about $10,000 US to have an opportunity to tranquilize these animals for scientific purposes. When scientist needs to go out and put a collar on or do blood draws, or if there's a sick member out there, these hunters get an opportunity to spend money that directly goes into conservation and science on the ground. That these animals would have to get tranquilized anyway, and a hunter gets that opportunity and takes his picture, and that just shows that it's not always about the kill, right? The hunt isn't always about the kill, it's about the journey. And what an opportunity that would be. And the same things happening in Africa as well with some rhinos. $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 for an opportunity to tranquilize a rhino for science. These animals got to be put under for whatever purpose for a couple of minutes anyway, and a hunter's given that money to the scientists to do it. That's a win-win.
So are we going to get you set up on a stone sheep and you're going to go out there with a dart gun?
Yes.
Steve joined the less than one and then quickly rejoined the less than one club. He was kicked out and then kicked back in.
Exactly. It's a 165 grain dart.
Yeah. So, you know, this is a tough and emotive subject. I was out for a walk with Melanie, my wife, the other day. We were talking about hunting in Africa obviously very emotive. But it's interesting. My friend Keith, I was over at his place for dinner last night, and we've talked about this a lot. And he goes, "Give me the 30-second rundown how mom sitting at home watching TV in the morning. How are you going to convince her that grizzly hunting is okay? Like, what's your 30-second spiel?" And I said, "There's no 30-second spiel on grizzly hunting, right? It's nuanced, it's complicated, and an urban environment. People aren't experiencing these animals. They don't know what it's like to be on the landscape. There's no easy answer around that. But, if you have the long conversation about hunting grizzly bears, hunting wolves, and Sue touches on that in this podcast and does a great job on it about her new appreciation. She was an advocate for not hunting wolves 20 years ago, but she's changed her perspective on that now that she's lived in a rural environment. She's seen wolves on the landscape. She's seen the destruction, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, it's interesting. So back to my buddy Keith's comments, like, what do you go and to say, that woman living in an urban environment that's never experienced grizzly bears, how do you justify grizzly hunting to that person? That's a tough one.
And that's exactly what it is, right? It's a tough, emotive subject, and that's what hunting is at a 10,000 foot level, right? But then you get to break it down into each little branch, we'll call it. And if you want to see wildlife on the landscape, it needs to be managed. Like it or not, human beings have had an impact since we first arrived. We've displaced animals, and in order for us to continue to live, something has to die, right? And every animal on the landscape has a part in that process, whether or not you are a consumptive user like a hunter or a non-consumptive user like a backpacker or a hiker. If you're hiking on a trail, something died in the way of making it, right? And if you're a vegetarian or a vegan, same sort of thing goes on to the harvest of your food. And as you said, like, that's 30 seconds right there, and there's nowhere near enough time to break it down and answer questions. So what it all boils down to, do you want to see wildlife on the landscape or not? And that's what it would be in a nutshell, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And the 30 seconds will never, ever do us as hunters justice. And that's why social media crushes us every single time. But when you sit down and analyze it and look at it and the nuances and, what's involved, the dollars that hunters contribute through wildlife management to the wildlife management programs through hunting these species. And certainly the guided hunts, there's a very compelling reason there on the economic side of things, if you're an economist. But then you get the bleeding heart that says, yeah, but that grizzly bear died. Yeah, well, the cost of that grizzly bear funded the lives of hundreds of other bears. It allowed them that opportunity to live because one bear made that sacrifice, as we know. So anyway, it wasn't our intent to go into that argument here, but it's definitely something that is a tough sell. Africa's another one of them, and Sue does a great job of articulating that based on her personal experience, right? I enjoy this podcast with her because she talks about what it meant to her personally and what she experienced and seen on the landscape at that level. And instead of, me reading it in a book and using the economic argument and such, right? So.
Exactly. And that's what it's all about. So yeah, we'll drop details on how to get her book in the show notes. So
fantastic. You've read a bunch of the book.
I've read some of it. It's darn near 500 pages.
Okay.
It's an in-depth read, and she was gracious enough to send me a couple articles for one campfire. And like I touched on in the episode there, the Cries of the Savanna. So if we're going to do a giveaway, what is the animal that makes that noise on the Savanna that I was floored to hear vocalizes? Send us an email at communications@wildsheepsociety.com and you can win something cool.
Right on. So episode 56, Cries of the Savanna with Sue Tidwell. Enjoy, and a belated Merry Christmas to those that we missed. Enjoy your holidays, and here's fingers crossed for a somewhat more normal 2022. So
don't jinx it.
Across Canada and throughout the world, if you come across a campfire in the woods, on a mountaintop, or next to a river, you'll find warm company and friendly people gathered around. Regardless of your lifestyle or place you call home, we invite you to learn more about what it means to be a hunter in the modern era. If you love the outdoors, care about where your food comes from, and are concerned for the future of wildlife and the environments that they need to survive, pull up a seat. We have a story to tell. Welcome to our campfire.
Hello, Sue. Welcome to the show, and it's great to finally connect with you.
Well, hello. I sure appreciate you having me on here, and I'm really excited to talk with you guys today.
Well, Steve, I know you've been corresponding a lot with Sue around, with our One Campfire initiative and everything. How about we talk a little bit about how you guys met and how that all came to fruition? Steve, give us some background there.
Sure. Basically, obviously follow a lot of hunting and non-hunting groups and pages on social media. And I saw a comment on, I don't remember what it was about, but Sue made a comment. Oh, it was a Jim Shockey post. And Sue said that she didn't hunt and was against it for a while, but she supported everything Jim Shockey stood for. And I commented back something along the lines of, we're trying to bridge the gap between hunters and non-hunters. You should check us out as well. And basically it went from there. We started following each other and chatting in instant messages, and found out a little bit more about her, found out about her book, got a copy of the book sitting right here on my desk in front of me. And from what I've read so far, it's absolutely amazing. And I'm truly thankful for the time she's going to devote to chatting with us today and dig a little bit deeper.
Very cool. So, Sue, let's maybe hit on that. So you talked about sort of being, I guess, did Steve use the word anti-hunting or maybe not for hunting? Maybe talk about that evolution. And I know you grew up kind of in a hunting family and your husband now hunts, but can you talk about that evolution for us on kind of where you've gone back and forth about on the hunting stance and your perspective on that, Sue?
Sure. I'm really not anti-hunting by any means. I grew up in a hunting family in a part of Pennsylvania where deer hunting was pretty much religion. So I grew up eating deer meat and all that most of my childhood. So I wasn't really against the sustainable use of wildlife. I understood it for for America. I knew that population problems and the meat was getting used, but like a lot of other Americans, we tend to lump African animals in a whole different category. We just look at them differently, and I was one of those people. I understood how you could hunt a deer and use the meat and all that, but I couldn't quite wrap my head around, hunting a zebra or, these exotic animals of Africa. It just seemed different to me. I was more emotionally attached to those animals. And so, I went to Africa with my husband. Well, first of all, because I wasn't, I understand the heart of a hunter more or less because I grew up in that thing. I don't look at hunters as these evil people like a lot of people do. I know them to be good, hardworking people who really care about wildlife and care about the environment. And so needless to say, I ended up meeting a hunter. I married one, and his dream was always to go to Africa and hunt. I also had a dream to go to Africa, but it wasn't to hunt. So I thought I was going to be in some cushy lodge and, driving through the Serengeti and seeing animals unafraid and all that. But I ended up with my husband on this very remote part of Tanzania. And even though I had a lot of questions and a lot of doubts, those were all kind of answered as I was over there. I just, I developed a good friendship with our Tanzanian game scout. I was really fortunate in Tanzania. They give you a game scout goes with every hunting party to make sure everything's legal and to document everything. And we were fortunate to get assigned a young 23-year-old female who could speak pretty good English. So her and I were able to develop a really good relationship. And she was like new to there was 21 people taking care of 4 of us. So, and she was new. The game scouts aren't a part of the hunting concession. They don't want them to be, because they want them to be, unbiased, I guess, to make sure things are legal. So she didn't know any of the people either. So we were kind of instantly drawn to each other, and we just became fast friends. And she just taught me so much about conservation and so much about why hunting is so important. And it just started through the time there. I just totally transitioned my whole thought process.
So this guide, or this, what did you call her? The 23-year-old?
She's a Tanzanian game scout.
Scout. Okay, cool. And she doesn't work for the hunting concession. Does she work for the Tanzanian government, or like some sort of private organization that they contract out? How does that work?
No, she works for the Tanzanian government.
Okay.
And they assign one. Like, we went there with another couple, and the other couple had their own game scout as well. That, one is assigned to them because they travel on their own Land Cruiser all day long, and then we are on another Land Cruiser. So we're assigned a game scout, and they're assigned a game scout. And neither one of them knew any of the people at the outfitters. They showed up about the same time that we did there. So they were just meeting the outfitters just like we were.
Okay. Yeah. That's actually quite a good way to do it, actually, to make sure that, to keep, you as the hunter in line, but even more so to make sure that the outfitter is complying with the regulations and making sure they're doing the right things. So it's actually a pretty solid idea. And again, we're going to talk about this, and this is one of our things that we're obviously going to explore today about Africa, but that's being funded by you being there hunting, right? So another job, again, because you are there and spending money in Africa, right?
Exactly. I mean, there are so many jobs created by hunting. It isn't even funny till you really start thinking about, till they pointed it out to me, the trickle down effect. It's just amazing, the trickle down effect that it has.
Yeah. So this is like such an emotive issue. And honestly, like, Africa is a scary conversation for a lot of hunters because, but there's some very solid facts. And I think, today I'm hoping that you can help us explore these. And I by no means am an expert on it, but, it's interesting when you sit down and talk to a non-hunter. And I've had people that, again, I mentioned earlier before we started recording, Sue, that professionally I was a pilot. I'd sit on the flight deck and with basically an anti-hunter, a raging anti-hunter, and then kind of explain Africa the way I perceive it. Now, I haven't been there, so this is my myopic view from somebody that's never been on the continent. So I'm not probably the best one to articulate this, but you sit down and you have a conversation. By the end of this flight I was on with this fellow, we sat there for about 4 hours together, and my perspective, and I showed him why I thought hunting was important and all aspects around that. And the interesting thing was, by the end of it, he goes, I understand it, it makes sense. He goes, but I'm still against killing those animals, But the one thing is, he actually had a completely revised perspective. But it is a daunting conversation, and it's not a 1-minute conversation on social media. This is a long talk on wildlife management and why it's so important in Africa. And I'm really hoping that your trip to Africa and your book, Cries of the Savanna, we can dive into that on why it's so important and give a kind of a really broad perspective. And I love your perspective in the sense that you come from it from a non-hunter's perspective. You're not a hunter, so not that you're a raging anti-hunter, but you're also coming from it with this unique perspective, different than what Steve and I would have, because we do go out and we do hunt, right?
Yeah, it was. It's just amazing the transition, and once you learn about Africa. But you were so right. People here just don't understand, and it is a long conversation. It's not like one or two little points that can just make it clear. And it's funny you say that about having the my husband has a lot of those conversations. My husband is a pilot also, so he has a lot of those conversations in the cockpit too on those long journeys. And most of the time when people really hear the facts, they come around and are like, wow, I get it now. It makes total sense.
Cool. So, all right, well, let's just jump into it. We're kind of, bouncing off the sides of it here, but let's jump into Africa. Maybe let's just start with, what was the biggest factor when you got boots on the ground in Africa? So just to recap, you weren't pro hunting in Africa. You had concerns there. One question that came to mind when you said this to me was, are you okay with hunting a grizzly bear in North America, or hunting a wolf, as an example? Because you got deer hunting, sustainability was fine. You're like, okay, this is about a sustainable harvest, and you're feeding a family and that sort of stuff. So, what was your perspective on, say, grizzly bears or wolves, that maybe it wasn't used for sustainability, maybe it was population control, or something like that? What's your take on that? Just because that's kind of in line with this, charismatic megafauna from Africa, right? If you're shooting a lion or a zebra or an elephant, what's your take on something like this?
It's interesting that you bring that up, because it is quite interesting, actually. And maybe I shouldn't admit that here, but in my 20s, I was a total wolf advocate. I wrote letters. I did all the things that we do. And then, years later, I find myself in the middle of wolf country and in Idaho, and with my husband, and I see firsthand the devastation that unmanaged wolves have caused. I mean, I've seen the 85% decrease in elk in the 2 counties nearest to us. So that's kind of one of the things that's kind of funny, because I feel like things in your life lead you certain directions. And I feel like I don't believe in coincidences. So I believe that was also a part of my learning journey, and a part of my thing that actually even led me to this book. But I realized, along with age and experience, that there's always 2 sides to every story. And there's got to be you can't base things on emotions, and you've got to look at both sides of it. Because now that I'm in the middle of Idaho, in the middle of wolf country, I still want wolves there. I love hearing them when we're camping at night, hearing them howling in the distance. I love that. But I believe we do have to manage them. And you just like any other animal, same with bear. I mean, you can't have, bears are overpopulating. They're going into other areas. If there's too many, they decimate the other wildlife. I mean, I just believe I've transitioned through my research and through my growth, I guess, to understand that we have to have management of wildlife.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, it does. And I appreciate that perspective. And it's great. It's great to hear that. And your comments are safe here. I don't think you're going to get any haters. I think that, for us as hunters and, consumptive users in the backcountry, it's really, heartening to hear this perspective, right? That people have this perspective. And that's one of the things we're advocating for, is just be open-minded, and you don't have to like what we do, but like listen to the story, trying to understand. Right. And when we hear this, to me, that's kind of one campfire. That's the goal of it, right? Is trying to educate people and have them see, and we're not asking them to embrace. We don't want them to go out and, go out shooting wolves. That's not what we're asking people to do. We just want there to be some level of understanding. So I think it's really encouraging. It's exciting when I hear your perspective.
I actually donate a chapter to this in the book, because I felt the same way about zebra. So because we live here on a horse ranch, Rick's, we live on the corner of a little small ranch, his parents and sisters' ranch, although we don't ranch ourselves anymore. But anyway, so we have like 20, 30 horses here. And I was, horses are a part of their work. I mean, they're pets, and they are part of their life here. So when Rick wanted to hunt a zebra, I felt this kind of, not quite as adamant, of course, but I was just emotionally attached to the idea of hunting a zebra. So I use that to talk about my transition with the wolves. So in one of the chapters, it gives me the opportunity to talk about my transition from how I viewed wolf hunting as well, and how I have come to learn that you got to look at two sides of the story, and you've got to, the truth is usually somewhere in between, and that you have to base things on science. So I kind of use that as a way to bring that part of my journey to light, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Hunters and non-hunters all want the same thing, right? We want to see balance and wildlife on the landscape. The only difference is the outcome of that wildlife, right? Nobody wants to see extinction. We want to see a wildlife on the landscape in perpetuity, right? Extinction is the last resort. We don't want that.
Definitely not.
Okay, Sue. So let's journey to Africa now. So what would you say is the most pivotal factor? Now, I know Lilian, your scout, was a big part of this, but what would you say was the most pivotal factor or event or item that you said, wow, I was wrong about Africa. There is a place for hunting here. If you could pick, and there's hundreds of reasons why there should be managed hunting in Africa. It makes sense. But what's the main one for you where you went, wow, this is a game changer. This is why we need to do this?
Well, there were several, but I'll start out with the first one. We were traveling along and we came across some elephant bones, and of course there were no tusks, and the elephant wasn't a result of the hunting concession. So they were assuming it could have died of natural causes, but we really don't know. It could have been poaching, but it brought up this whole subject of poaching. And Lilian, during this whole exchange and this whole time on the ground when we were looking at the bones and everything, explained to me, because I don't know, I don't even know how I brought it up or how I stated it, but she brought it up to me that poaching a lot of times is the animals are killed just to make the lives of rural people easier. I mean, it's not always about the horns and the tusks and stuff. I mean, a lot of poaching. I had no idea there's so many kinds of poaching. There's bushmeat poaching. There's poaching for wood. There's poaching for honey. There's poaching for all kinds of things you would never consider. And she explained all these different kinds of poaching to me, and how it's just the poor local people, villagers who are just trying to make their lives easier. She explained to me what it's like to live with lions and leopards in your backyard, and how dangerous they are, and elephants too. Elephants are extremely dangerous to live with, and they can wipe out a villager's crops in one night. His whole livelihood for the entire year can be wiped out in one night. They eat 400 or 500 pounds of food a day. So you can imagine what a herd of elephants can do to people. And you're not talking about people who can go to the grocery store and buy more food. This is what they need to feed their families. So these poor people are out there with pots and pans, banging on them, trying to keep elephants away from their crops. And of course, that oftentimes can piss an elephant off and leads to, deaths and bad circumstances. But she explained to me from the viewpoint of the local people. She explained to me that, because I was really against the idea of hunting leopards and lions, for instance, because those are another animal we're so attached to. But Lilian explained to me that far more animals die from poisoning than by hunters. Hunters, it's so regulated. Just a few are allotted, and they have to be very old males past the breeding age. And but poisoning kills everything. Like if you're a villager, you got to remember it's a cattle society over there. So there's cattle everywhere, and for the villagers, and that's their livelihood. So they don't want to live with lions and hyenas and leopards. So what they do is they put poison out, and that'll kill anything that feeds upon the carcass, and then anything that feeds upon those. So you're talking about killing vultures and all kinds of other small predators, as well as the lions and leopards. And so, I started to see conservation or hunting through the eyes of the local people, and how their livelihoods and their welfare is tied to the welfare of wildlife. If you give local people a reason to protect wildlife, make them valuable, as much as people hate that idea, that placing a value on an animal, it works. I mean, if you make a lion worth $50,000, that gives people incentive to find ways to mitigate the danger. Maybe they'll put their cattle in bomas at night, or like fenced corrals. Maybe they'll put guards out. Maybe they'll try to find other ways, or they'll allow the loss of a cattle or two once in a while. And it gives them the money to build fences. But if the lions are doing them no good but harm, there is no reason to protect them. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but about 2 months ago, to understand African's conservation, you have to put your thoughts in what it would be like to live in Africa for those rural people. 2 months ago, 3 young kids were going after their cattle that were lost, and they were eaten by lions as another brother hid in the tree. He was also injured, but he watched his 3 brothers get eaten by a lion. Wow. So this is the kind of stuff that happens in Africa that people don't want to talk about. And this is the reason we need to make those dangerous and destructive animals a reason to protect them.
Yeah, absolutely. There's the whole poaching aspect of it, as we know, right? Which in itself is a big source of revenue for these communities, right? So somebody comes in, and hunters are spending money, and then they're hiring these hunting concessions, are hiring anti-poaching individuals, and in many cases I've heard like there's 150 individuals that are hired at one time, and it's all there because the animals are protected by the concession. They want to make sure that they're safe because there's value there. So then now they can hire these locals to come in and protect them, which will keep the animals safe because they're worth something. If they were worthless, they wouldn't be protecting them, and then people do still poach them, right? There is international trade for rhino gall and rhino horn and elephant tusks and that sort of stuff, as we know. So it's also a source of revenue and a huge employer. Right? As an example, Lilian was getting paid because you were there, right?
Exactly. And you got to remember bushmeat poaching. I mean, people don't talk about much that. I didn't even know about bushmeat poaching till I was over there. But I mean, bushmeat poaching is a multi-billion-dollar business. I mean, wild game in the cities of Africa is a high commodity. So some of the poaching is done for subsistence. They kill a zebra to eat it themselves. So a lot of times they kill it and then sell it to the cities and stuff. So bushmeat poaching and when you destroy game, you're destroying the carnivores that feed upon it. So there's just a lot of different kinds of poaching, and that's what I kind of learned more than. I mean, that was one of the main things I learned through Lilian. And another thing about hunting in the poaching situation is Lily explained to me that poachers do not want to operate in a hunting concession. It's just too dangerous for them. You've got hunters. Where we were at, there was 560 square miles of territory, and you had us traversing these, 2 land cruisers full of armed people traversing this land all day long. And so it's just too dangerous for poachers. So Lilian explained that they don't like to operate in hunting concessions. And also, which I never would have ever considered this until I was there, but the game concessions are positioned in so we were on the border of Ruaha National Park, and the game concessions, the game reserves are positioned around the outside of that. So they actually strategically place game reserves to act as a buffer zone. So there's like a line of defense that the poachers have to get through to get to those national parks. And it also is an overflow area, like in national parks, the animals if they get overpopulated, they overflow into the game reserves. But it also is a buffer zone. It's created like a buffer zone to keep poachers away from the parks.
Yeah. And so they're being very clever about how they're managing it as well. Some countries, obviously, a number of countries in Africa obviously have banned hunting, Kenya being one of them. Obviously, Tanzania has not. It's very open there. And you said you were on the Ruaha National Park. Is that where you were?
Yeah, we were right on the edge of it. Yeah, there was we were on the Mozambique riverbed, or the Mozambique River. It was dried up when we were there. But yeah, that I was literally, our tent was probably 20 yards from the river, dried up river. And right across there was the park.
Okay. So it's interesting. I was reading about Tanzania, and they're saying about only 1/3 of the population has electricity. So one of the big threats to Africa now is this emerging middle class that I read a stat that half the world's population growth over the next 3 decades is going to be in Africa. And 6 of the world's fastest economies, 6 of the 10 fastest growing is in Africa. So there's this emerging middle class. Look at Kenya. They're putting the Chinese are putting a massive railway through the middle of a rail network through the middle of their national parks. So it's fragmenting habitat. So there's this huge risk of habitat loss. And Tanzania was one of them. There's the Selous Game Reserve, and they're putting this massive hydroelectric dam in there. It's supposed to flood twice the size of size of Salt Lake City, and obviously displace all those animals, right? So there's this massive habitat loss threat that's kind of the new threat to Africa. And, hunting is a huge source of revenue. So that's kind of one of the arguments, that there is this opportunity to protect these animals. And there's a commercial aspect of it as well. But if you take away the hunting, you've lost that opportunity. So when you were there, talk a little bit about what you've seen there. So obviously you had your scout, you had the hunting concession. I get in this argument all the time that, this feeds communities, and I guess that's one of the things that I get in arguments with, is people argue that that the locals don't eat the food, that meat goes to waste. When your husband, you said he shot a zebra, I don't know what else he got, but what was your experience like that with the meat and the locals and the employment and the communities? Did you experience any of that? What was that like, Sue? Tell us what that looked like on the ground for you.
Okay, well, let me first tell you, there's 21 people taking care of 4 of us. We were in such a remote camp that literally our water came from a 3-foot hole in the ground that was dug into the riverbed. And they would scoop it out bucket by bucket, fill it into things. Then they would crawl up a scaffolding and dump it into a tank so that we had water. It was just unbelievable when you see the work involved in living in such a remote place, and just simple day-to-day activities. I mean, once I learned what was involved in me having a warm shower, I was just like, oh my gosh. I mean, I was guilt-ridden every time I got a shower, and I made them really, really short. But anyway, but and since Masimba camp, it was Lion Camp or Masimba camp, it wasn't the day they did the tour camp was another one of my eye-opening moments. So we did this tour, and I saw the water hole where our water's coming. I realized how they were carrying it and heating it over a fire and carrying it up a scaffolding and dumping it in the thing so I could have a shower. I saw how they were ironing my clothes to keep the not only but basically to keep the parasites off them, because they were washing my clothes in that same water that's coming out of that riverbed. When I saw that was involved, I saw all the zebra hanging. There was no refrigeration, so we were so remote. We were 4 hours away from even the nearest village. So, like a lot of hunting concessions can take the meat straight to the villages, we couldn't. So all the meat was dried. What we didn't eat that night for dinner, they dried it. It was like socks hanging on a clothesline. I mean, there was just drying everywhere. And then they would take it home at the end of the season, I'm sure, because all these people were there for like the whole season. They don't see their families for months. So as we're going on this tour, I'm seeing you have somebody taking care of generators. You have 2 or 3 cooks. You have somebody washing clothes. You have somebody taking care of our tent. You have just all these people doing these things. And then at the end of the tour, I don't even know how it came out. And he says, well, this will all be gone as soon as you guys leave. And my heart just fell I just was like, what, because I was already attached to Masimba camp, and I was like, how can you be destroying this little? It was my little Shangri-La, But he says, we destroy because if we don't, poachers would move in during the off season, and we can't have that. He says, but don't worry. He says it takes 30 villagers 30 days next season to rebuild it. They will hire 30 villagers from the local village, and they will come and they will stay a month, and they will recut the roads, and they will rebuild the huts, and they will reset up the bathrooms and the toilets and the things that they have there for us. I mean, all of that will be rebuilt by the nearest village, which is our Gogo. That was our head tracker. It was his village. And then Joel went on to explain, he says, do you realize we don't have vegetables here, right? So we buy all of our vegetables in the city. All the vegetables we serve you, we're spending money in the city. You've used a plane to get here. You used taxi service. You stayed in a hotel. The animals you get have to go through all these processes and regulations. And he just started telling me all the trickle down effect of that one camp and our hunt. And it was just amazing when I thought about it. And
for sure. Sorry,
hunters, I'll just say one more quick thing. I don't want to keep droning on. Sorry. But sometimes I don't know where to stop. I'm sorry. Just interrupt me if I go on. But there's a lot of different studies, but there is, like, it takes way more phototourists or general tourists to produce the same amount of money a hunting tourist does, with a way much more effect on the environment. I mean, hunters don't care about fancy stuff or lodges or all that stuff. So their imprint on the land is way less than the photo tourists have, and it takes because they pay so much more money. It's like some it's 16 to 1, sometimes 32 to 1. One place it was 1,600 to 1. So it's kind of crazy when you look at the statistics.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to ask you about there. And when I rudely interrupted you, my apologies. And by no means stop, because this is fantastic what you're sharing with us. And that's one thing that I was reading about, was that a lot of the anti-hunting advocates will argue that just replace it with photography. And one of the big arguments that I've read is that, well, a lot of these places, like you, for example, you flew to a very remote area with this remote camp that was temporarily set up, and a photographer is not going to go there. They're going to go to the ultimate picture spot along with other people, but these remote areas. So what it's doing is it's spreading the economic imprint way further in the economy, and it's going to go to these remote areas where there's very few people, a lot less game in many cases as well. And it's not, they can't market that to the photography community because people just aren't going to go there. They're going to go to the really hotspot places. So it's done a really good job of diversifying areas that are not well used. And then what happens is those areas normally that they're being supported now by a hunting concession, because there is a lot of money being spent there. There's going to be other economic competitors, such as farming or maybe mining or other items, and it's going to take away from the economy of the hunting, and then it's habitat loss for those animals. So those animals are going to die anyway because they don't have that place to live, because there's going to be maybe have a farm in that area or something, as an example, agriculture, that sort of thing, right? So
yeah, you've hit the nail on the head as far as all of these other things I've talked about already. They are actually just, they're not even the main thing about hunting. The main thing that hunting does is preserve habitat in its natural state. That is the number one thing I learned. And I didn't learn it by reading in a book. I learned it by riding on the back of a Land Cruiser with tsetse flies eating me to death or sucking the blood from me, scorching sun. The animals were afraid of us. It's not like the Serengeti where the animals are used to people. They run. I mean, I have so many pictures of butts disappearing into the bush. I mean, I don't have a lot of good pictures of animals from over there because they were running from us. And they weren't as populated as the national parks. I mean, so what I came to learn anything and feel in my bones, deep down in my bones, was that these are areas that not most tourists would want to go. I mean, I love the excitement of it, but not every tourist would want to live like that. Not every tourist would want to sleep with lions pooping outside their tent at night and hearing them lions roaring at night and just, I mean, laying in your tent thinking you're like a shish kebab or something. And but anyway, so hunting does more than anything protect habitat in its natural state. It gives people a reason not to. It's like anything. If you have a ranch, you have to make it productive. So if you can make it productive by selling, a few tags of a deer on it, then maybe you're going to let the habitat be wild. If you can't make money that way, you're liable to tear down the trees, plant some crops, or maybe put a bunch of cattle there. It's the same thing in Africa. I mean, like you said earlier, the population is just growing like crazy, and they're wanting, more cattle and more crops. And it's the hunting concessions are protecting that and keeping the habitat valuable in its natural state. And I think it protects hunting areas. I can't remember the statistic right now, but it's way outnumbers what the national parks protect.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a lot of the reading I've done around this is what did they say? In 2007, trophy hunting areas in sub-Saharan Africa were estimated to conserve 344 million acres of wildlife habitat. And that exceeds the total size of the region's national parks by 22%. So, you can't get much better of a stat than that, right? It's
exactly.
It goes to show you how much land is at the hands of these guided hunts and making wildlife valuable. People see the value in it, and they want to protect those animals because they're worth something. Otherwise, and it's scary to think what the poaching community would do if there wasn't, wildlife hunting concessions protecting them.
Oh, it just breaks my heart every time I see. I mean, it's like a knife in my heart every time I see another propaganda or something else against hunting, because I just, and I didn't just listen. I mean, I listened to all this stuff and I felt it was true in my heart, but I didn't just accept everything that was said. I came home, even though I felt that it was right, I backed it all up. I mean, I researched to make sure what I was feeling in my heart was right. And I feel strongly behind it. I've read a lot of articles about the anti stuff, but you'll notice they never talk about habitat. They don't mention that the wildlife is eaten, that it's still used. They call it these trophies, but they don't mention that this food goes to feed, that they're old males past their breeding age. They don't mention that all the meat is consumed. I mean, that's just a few things. But to go back to the tourist thing for a minute, I had always wanted to go to Africa, as because I was infatuated with Africa. But if I had gone without Rick, I would have flown into Arusha, the big city of Tanzania, and I would have gone to the national parks that were only a few hours away. There's like 5 or 6 of them right within, I think 5 or 6 hours. I would have gone there. I would have seen all this wildlife, and that wasn't afraid of me. I would have gone home and swam in a pool during the afternoon. I would have been in all these things. I would not have paid the money and taken the time to get to where we went. So, I mean, that's just the reality of it, how hunting protects, those vast areas that aren't suitable for photo tourists.
Yeah, that's certainly a very compelling argument and a very valid one, because I hear that a lot. I hear people saying, why don't we just do photography? I'm like, well, a photographer is not going to pay $100,000 to go and photograph a lion. That's just a fact. So, so there's the economic aspect of it, but then it's like, okay, but they'll pay $1,000. Okay, but then we need 100 of them. So, instead of one person on the landscape, we have 100 people on the landscape, right? So and of course, what does that do to habitat, and what does that do to the lions? And one lion dies because that person dropped $100,000 US. And yes, a lion had to die for that to happen. But look at all the money. I think in Tanzania, the stat I heard is that 60% of income for their wildlife management authority comes from trophy hunting. So, who's going to pay for that? Is the wildlife photographers going to pay for the wildlife management authority with their revenue? And it's not sustainable, right? They don't have enough. There's not enough revenue to do that.
No, they need both. You can't have one. I'm not trying to say by any means, nobody, I don't think, is trying to say that you eliminate one source of income over another. We need both. We need photo tourism and general tourism to protect those parts and bring in that kind of money. But you also need the hunting tourism. You need everything you can do to bring jobs and sustainability and protect habitat. I mean, you can't just get rid of one thinking one is going to do all the things. We need both.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Sue, let's jump into your book and talk a little bit about the evolution of that. And first of all, let's start with the name. So, Cries of Savanna. How did that come about? Now, I've kind of heard a little bit about your you lying in the tent and the things you're hearing and the feelings you were having. Is that where the name comes, or kind of where does the name of your book come from? And let's jump into talk a little bit about your book now.
Okay, well, Cries of the Savanna. I mean, I tell you, there's just nothing like laying in a tent and you hear that lion roar on outside, and the hyenas are just amazing. And then you hear the hippos and the elephants. I mean, it's scary. It's you're like petrified, but at the same time, you're just, oh my gosh, you're just so enlivened by it. And I just can't even put it in words. But so I came to fall in love with the Cries of the Savanna, as I call it. I mean, every night was like I called it the African Symphony, because every night it was a new symphony. It, depended what animals were doing what at what time. And, once in a while, a lion wouldn't be there, or the elephant, we wouldn't hear him one night, but every night was a little different. And we'd wake up in the morning and we'd talk about what we heard during the night. And it was I just loved it. I just loved hearing the Cries of the Savanna. And it just touches me. And then the other part of that is the more I learned and the more research I did, and I don't know if I've mentioned this yet, but the book did result from as I was learning all this and my friendship grew with Lilian, I made a promise to her that I would try to help people understand, because they saw the writing on the wall. They could see this anti-hunting stuff and what it was doing to them and the wildlife. And so they were deeply concerned about it. So I promised Lilian that I would do whatever I could to help people understand. Well, I came home and I tried talking to people here and there, and but it wasn't enough. And I finally, a point in my life, when Rick took the new job, and I finally had time to just dedicate to this book, and the Cries of the Savanna is what developed from that promise. But the Cries of the Savanna itself, the name, refers not only to the cries of the night, but to the cries for the world to awaken. So, this may sound corny, but here's my line, I am not the same having heard the cries of the Savanna, not only their savage songs, but the cries for the world to awaken, to understand the hard truth needed to ensure their cries forever remain a part of wild Africa and not just ghostly echoes from a distant past. I know that sounds a little corny, but that is how I feel in my heart.
That's powerful.
One of talking about the Cries of the Savanna there, Sue, you sent us a couple articles for One Campfire to post, and truly thankful for that. But reading the African Symphony one of the things that grabbed me, I didn't even think of, was the sound of a hippo when Rick talks about it. There's a deep bellowing, and his best guess was a hippo. I had no idea they would vocalize like that. That just goes outside of my thought there.
Yeah, and they're so distinctive, so you know exactly what a lot of the sounds, you have no clue what they are, but the hippo, and we had a hippo move. We had a little puddle, about a 15-foot puddle that was right down from our tent, left over from the riverbed, and one of the hippos, there was a hippo pool, 30, what we call the hippo pool. There was about 100-foot stretch of water still left in the river about 300 yards away, and so there was about 20 some hippos there that survived in there. Well, this hippo apparently had a falling out with the big guy, and was kicked out of the hippo pool. And so he had to move into our puddle to survive. So we named him Willie because we did like Americans do. We named him, and he moved into the puddle beside our tent. So we had to be extra careful because you never want to get between a hippo and their safety zone, which is water. So we had to be very careful about where he was at. But he lived in the he lived in the pond like 20 yards from us. And so we could hear him at night. And most of the hippos are out feeding at night, and you can hear them bellowing and stuff.
Wow, that's cool. So when you think back now romantically to Africa and everything that you've experienced, what stands out the most? Like, you obviously you came home and it changed your life. You wrote a book about it. You're going on podcasts. You're talking about your experience. But what stands out the most for you? Is it the conservation piece, or is it the experience itself, like seeing the animals, or like what really resonates with you when you think back to it? If you think one thing, what is that stands out the most?
I think, of course, you're infatuated with the animals. I mean, they're just amazing. But I think just as much, if not more, it's the people. I mean, the people. I love the people. I mean, I feel like we were so blessed to be in this position with these 21 amazing Tanzanians and develop, because we were there almost, over 3 weeks, and you're with them all day long. And I developed a relationship with them. I mean, even the ones that couldn't speak English, you can still communicate. Plus, I did learn a lot of Swahili, or tried to. Lilian was a good teacher, and then everybody else jumped on the bag. Once they knew I was trying to learn Swahili, I had everybody teaching me words. So it was pretty interesting. But they're just so happy and just so just generous, and they would bring me little gifts of like a tuft of lion hair or a porcupine quill they would find, or things like that. I mean, I just can't tell you how much I appreciated the people and the friendships that we made there.
Very cool. So you made this commitment to Lilian, and I can hear the emotion in your voice when you talk about the 21 people. Obviously, these people impacted you greatly. Do you stay in touch with Lilian?
I do. Yep. She read the whole book, and she's young, so she has a mind like a steel trap. So anytime I couldn't remember the name of a river, or I couldn't remember something, thanks to the internet, it has its downfalls, but it also has it makes the world a smaller place. But I mean, sometimes she'll be out of touch for 2 weeks at a time when she's out in the bush, on poaching patrol or something. But then she'll answer me, and sometimes I get an answer in 30 seconds. I mean, it just depends. But she kind of made sure she read everything and made sure I had everything right and accurate. So.
And how's her English and everything, Sue? Is she
speaks very good English. I mean, she also speaks Swahili and very well, of course, but her English was good enough that we could have really easy conversations. Like the people we were with had a game scout. He tried really hard. His name was Nico, and he spoke some English, but it was very broken and difficult. So conversations with Nico were very we're forced. Do you know what I mean? But with Lilian, it's an easy conversation. It's she's just fun, and anyway, you'll learn more about her if you read the book. But she has pretty good English and made conversations really easy.
Cool. So next question, the obvious one is, are you going back? When's your next trip to Africa? What's the plan there?
We're supposed to go back in May, because this was supposed to be a once in a lifetime experience. But just as a warning to anybody who thinks that that's going to happen, if you go to Africa once, you're never going to be happy with once. So we're going back, but this time, unfortunately, we are going to a different country just because Rick wants to see different places and experience something different. I'm torn about that. There's a part of me that, but you can never recreate that first thing. I still do want to see Lilian again, and Raphael and Joel and all them. I hope to see them all again someday in person, but I don't think we'll be going right back to right where we went, because a lot has changed. If you read the book, a lot has changed there too because of things that have happened. But you'll find out at the end of the book. But but yeah, so we're going back again and learn about it in a different part of Africa.
Where are you guys hoping to go?
I think this next time it's Mozambique.
Okay.
Yeah, I've heard that if you go once, it's not going to happen. You're going multiple times, and I don't know if I told you, Sue, but Kyle knows. In 2018, I think it was, I entered one of those draws you see on social media, and like 1 in 10,000 chance to win a trip, and I actually won a all expenses paid minus airfare safari in South Africa.
Oh wow!
And we were going to go to Limpopo, and of course we booked for September of 2020, and well, I'm still waiting. So if we're going on 3.5 years, we were supposed to, like, literally we were going to go the first week of September in 2020, and things came down in March or April. So yeah, that sucked. We were looking forward to it. It was like 6 days, 7 nights or whatever it was. But yeah, then my father-in-law has been to Africa hunting, I'd say 15, 20 times. And he said the same thing. I was going to go just once, and here I am. And he goes almost yearly. And he said, if you're going to go, be ready you're going more than once. So yeah,
yep.
It doesn't surprise me. I've heard that it
bites.
Be
prepared, because I know it's kind of funny, because Rick and I really had to come up to do this. We really had to. We had a couple rentals. We sold a rental house. We sold our mules, our pack mules. We sold our camper. We did all kinds of stuff to make this happen. So it was supposed to be a once in a lifetime trip. But like I said, you can't just go once. You can go. But people got to realize that you can go to Africa and hunt like some of the animals, like the plains game and stuff, for the price of going to Hawaii. So it doesn't have to be this thing that costs $50,000 or $80,000. It doesn't have to be that. You can go very reasonably, and that's right. What I want people to understand too.
That's right. That was something I got sent a price list, and I was like, oh boy. Some was honestly more expensive than I figured, but others were just like, wow, I really didn't think it'd be that cheap. And that just comes with a well-managed concession, right? And managing for abundance on the landscape. And that's what hunters do.
Exactly. And whether you're hunting an impala, which are very prolific, and everywhere, you're still getting the experience. I mean, maybe an impala is only going to cost $400, but you're still in Africa, and you're still seeing all these other animals, and you're still experiencing everything. It doesn't matter what animal you're hunting. So, I mean, I just encourage everyone to, I'm not trying to turn people into hunters, but I just encourage, people to try to experience it for themselves, or to go to Africa in some other way.
Very cool, Sue. So, I guess Mozambique is that's the plan, but with COVID now and everything that's going on in Africa, there's no short-term plan. So I guess that's kind of up in the air. Are you writing, part 2 of Cries at the Savanna, or are there any other aspirations for,
oh my
obviously
gosh.
This is
my husband right now would kill me if I said I was writing another book. He's tired of, he's missing his wife. I mean, you can't tell, like, he'll start talking to me and my mind is still in Africa. So like, I have to like snap to it to hear what he's saying. And I have just been totally engrossed in this for 3 years now. It took me 2 years to write, and I had no idea the process of marketing and, editing and finding a cover. And I had Hunters Inc., who luckily, Jocelyn, who's the editor of Hunters Inc., luckily felt really strongly in my book. And she ended up taking over as editor. And so her and her husband, they all edited it and made sure it was accurate. They live in Namibia. So, and the cover artist was from Namibia. So I've tried to keep most of the money in Africa. And, but anyway, so with their help and stuff, it really helped. It's a hard process doing a book. But I don't know, a couple of people, who knows? I'm never going to say never. But once I get through this and we'll see how it goes, there might be another one.
Oh, I absolutely. Cool. So, I love the cover photo. It's just like, it grabbed my attention when I first saw it online, and like I'm staring at it right now. It's just, it grabs you, and that's really, really well done.
Oh, I think she did a marvelous job. I mean, I originally, because traditional publishers weren't really interested in me, to be honest, because I'm a first-time author, and I had basically no following. So I did the self-publishing route, and I had a picture of a acacia tree and a lion under it. That was my cover. And then when Jocelyn from Hunters Inc. came on board, because she felt so strongly on the project, she said, we need to do a new cover. And then she brought this artist on board, and they showed me like 3 mock-ups. And I was just like, oh my gosh. I mean, that one just spoke to me. It just, I'm like you, it just grabbed me. And I was just so excited because I just think it really does a good job.
That's stunning. So if somebody wants to get the book, follow you, learn more about Africa, where do they go? How do we get the book? I'm going to order it now. I actually read a bunch of it online, but it doesn't work for me. I gotta have a physical copy. So how do we get the book?
I'm like you. I have to have a physical copy. It's on Amazon. So just type in Cries of the Savanna, and Sue Tidwell. Or you can follow me on Instagram. I'm at suetidwell.writer. On Facebook, I think it's just Sue Tidwell. And I try to post every day something about Africa or a little fact or something. So if you're following me on one of those things, and then you'll also, see posts about the book once in a while too. But yeah, that's... I'd love it if you'd support me and buy the book and help spread the word and educate people about Africa.
100%. I'm buying the book for sure. I'm looking forward to reading it, and we will definitely share this. And I want to congratulate you on the book. It's fantastic, and like I said, I have read a bunch of it online. And really enjoyed it. It's really captivating, and your photography is amazing. I've also checked out your Insta stuff, and so really excited and just really grateful that you're telling the story to me. Hearing it from your perspective is really, really for me. That's you have such a unique perspective compared to where I come from, and I just love hearing it from the words from your mouth, basically. So.
Well, I just appreciate this opportunity so much to talk a little bit about Africa and Cries of the Savanna. As you can see, I'm passionate about the people I met there and the people of Africa and the wildlife, and their lives are intertwined. I mean, you can't protect wildlife if you also don't if you don't take care of the African people as well. They both have to benefit for wildlife management to work. But so anyway, I appreciate this opportunity, and it was really enjoyed talking with you.
Likewise, Sue. Appreciate it, and we'll be sure to share this with our listeners. And we're going to have you back on. When you get back from Mozambique, we're going to have you back on, and maybe we can try and get Lilian or one of your friends on too. That'd be really cool to.
Yeah, she would probably do that. She would, I know I'd mentioned it before, and she said she was really nervous, and she was because somebody else had asked about her being on a podcast, and she said she was nervous about her English, and I said, "Oh, Lilian, I think your English would fine. You do fine, So anyway, yeah, that'd be a great idea.
Yeah, it'd be cool. And the two of you on there, like having your friendship there and being able to, she'd feel much more comfortable too. And then, it would be really good to get the perspective of both you collectively. I think that would be something really neat. Like it'd be great to have her, but I think the two of you on would be even better. So.
Oh yeah, I never even thought of that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Sue. We really appreciate you taking the time, and I really enjoyed our listen today, and I learned a lot. And I just love hearing it from the passion in your voice and the excitement and how emotionally charged this is for you. It's really cool to hear. So thank you for taking this time today.
Well, thank you, Kyle, and thank you, Steve. I sure appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.